Welcome in, everybody. Let's get right into it. Suffice to say, religion plays a huge part in a lot of science fiction. It's mostly used as a mechanism to control the populace. It's a mask for, say, a race of beings that possess vastly superior technology. Or, in some instances, religion is actually describing a true pathway to power or enlightenment or ascension of some kind to a higher plane of existence. Whether it's the seemingly very real powers that worshipping the Emperor of mankind, as well as the Chaos Gods in Warhammer 40k, gives all of their warriors and priests and followers, or whether it's the religious zealotry that created the warrior culture of the Jaffa that survived well after they overthrew their Goa'uld masters who posed for millennia as their gods, or the mistaking the old tech for godly powers in the first season of The 100, religion plays a pretty big part in a ton of major sci-fi works. Hell, look at Dune and Star Wars. Two really impactful yet wildly different adaptations of religious fervor and ideologies, but yet the religious inspirations are major aspects of what makes both franchises so enthralling. And let's not even try to get into Dan Simon's Hyperion series in the damn Shrike. I mean, it was fun to read, but just felt like nerd homework at a certain point. Now, right off the bat, it's pretty clear to see that none of these marvelous works of science fiction are actively trying to convert their audiences to any kind of belief system. Although, to a certain kind of person, I could see how the Sith's way of doing things might be appealing. And hell, I mean, the Jedi are kind of like space Buddhists, a little bit. So I guess you couldn't really blame folks if, that's what's floating their ethical boat. And I'm pretty sure that it's safe to say that if the likes of Warhammer 40k and Dune aren't trying to convert you to anything, then having religion and religious aspects play a part in your sci-fi is pretty damn safe. So let's get that out of the way. Religion and sci-fi is pretty safe. But why have it at all? Most people see science as kind of antithetical to religion in the first place. I am not one of those people. So, someone might be expecting religion to be a bit counterproductive as something to have in your sci-fi story, no matter what it is, right? Well, like a ton of things in life, this seemingly counterproductive combination actually creates a classic motif in science fiction. I mean, religion is most often used in all kinds of stories, not just science fiction. But it's used to highlight some kind of hubris, right? Some big aspect of whatever is going on that's clearly going to play a part in the downfall of, some kind of society or evil or a villain or some kind of empire somewhere. But it is also there to establish a connection with the audience in some way. And, I mean, the easy answer is that it's one of the oldest establishments of human hierarchy that we have, that we do amongst ourselves. So it's something that we very readily and easily understand. So that manifests in whatever the religious aspect is there to develop, right? With Star Wars, Yoda tells Anakin to train himself to let go of everything he fears to lose. And then he tells Luke that we are luminous beings, not this crude matter that makes up our bodies. Both of which are very Buddhist and Christian teachings. Aside from the real-world religious connections, though, these teachings from Yoda also hold instruction beyond those religious connections. They're telling the young Skywalkers that we are more than the sum of our parts, that we need to make ourselves strong by disconnecting from what makes us fearful, to not let connections to anything hold power over us, because once they do, then we can be manipulated. Our feelings can be used against us. That's something that Obi-Wan warns Luke against, is to trust your feelings, but they could be made to serve the Emperor, right? And that would be kind of a foreshadowing against Luke's fight with Vader and the Emperor later on. And these are some powerful lessons for anybody, even if you're not religious at all, right? A pretty watered down basic example. If, let's say you're incredibly loyal to a friend of yours, right? But that friend is manipulating you and causing you to do a whole slew of terrible things, but you just have this really forthright and loyal and righteous connection to this person, right? Being their friend gives you a huge boost of serotonin. It makes you feel great, and they're a shining example of humanity in your eyes. They can do no wrong. You have this really strong attachment to that person, right? Well, once that person, let's say, decides to finally discard you, throw you away, or use you in such a way that it now becomes apparent to you that you're just being used and you're a tool and you're disposable, it's too late now, right? The deed is done. I mean, this is the story of Anakin Skywalker, right? With Darth Sidious and the Emperor. You have to sever that connection. If Anakin had only taken that lesson, that warning from Yoda to heart, and not let his emotions and his connections to both Padme, his unborn twins, to Palpatine, to peace, freedom, and justice, to his new empire, if he had not let all of these things cloud his judgment and put them before doing what was right and what he knew was right and resolute, then he would have gone with Obi-Wan. He would have let him help Padme. Padme would have lived. Instead, he just falls into darkness. So if you don't want to let yourself fall into darkness, you need to take this personal inventory of yourself and realize those attachments could harm me somehow, right? And maybe not even those attachments to any particular person. It could be to a thing, to a place, a book, a game, a activity. Maybe maybe whatever you're attached to manifests itself as an addiction. Who knows? But once you have this unseverable attachment that can't be broken. And if it is, without you breaking it, then it will become extremely harmful to you. So, yeah, it's a religious teaching that is agnostic at the same time. It doesn't need to be, but it most certainly is. So let's move over to Stargate for a second. Let's go to Teal'c and the story of the Jaffa. It's in Stargate SG-1. Now, Teal'c keeps up a ton of the zealous cultural practices that the Jaffa develop under the oppression and slavery that comes with worshiping the Goa'uld as gods. And as a matter of fact, this warrior zealot culture is both a prevalent point of conflict and a beacon of hope around which the show deals with constantly, with the revelation that their gods are not, in fact, these all-powerful beings. The Jaffa are faced with a myriad of very difficult questions, and they often end in some perilous kind of battle or power struggle, or at the very least a huge ethical dilemma for the Jaffa. And those big questions are usually ones like, if our gods don't lead us, then who will? If our gods and everything stemming from them don't give us meaning, then who or what does? If the Goa'uld are evil, then am I evil? And is everything that I've believed in evil as well? I mean, Stargate did a damn good job of giving us a huge existential crisis conversation, both as a really on-the-nose point-to-point argument, as well as with some subliminal messaging in there. I know at face value it kind of all seems very upfront, but there's a lot of things that go unsaid. And they're unsaid for a purpose. It's done for a reason. It's not some accidental byproduct, which is just as important and just as powerful as the things that are said out loud. Although, towards the end of the series, things aren't necessarily answered completely or resolved for Teal'c and our Jaffa friends. Yet, as a matter of fact, the burgeoning Jaffa nation is plagued with a brand spanking new religious order that is just as, if not even more evil, than the Goa'uld. They happen across the awe-inspiring fallen ascended beings, the Ori. And while the Goa'uld offered power and ascension, while all of their shows of strength and might were technologically based in their falsehoods, the Ori's power is very, very real, and they did have the power to ascend their followers, only they didn't. They sap all of the power from their believers' faith and devotion. They probably take it from their souls whenever they die, instead of ascending them. Now, where the Jaffa's previous masters promised to do things like raise the dead and cast armies aside with a wave of their hands, the Ori actually did that. So their shows of power were everything the Goa'uld promised that they could do and much more. Only the Ori and their prophets, they they did a lot more terrible things than just raise the dead. They made zombies, for one. They unleashed viruses. They destroyed... Well, they almost destroyed Earth. They did a ton of terrible, powerful things. All in an effort to recruit more believers to boost the Ori's power. Now, in fact, they were so serious that the Ori offered their ultimatums straight out the gate. Bow down and worship us, or die. Now, the Jaffa Nation had a pretty impossible question to answer. Do they cast aside all that they fought for to be a free people? Or do they give in and bow to a very real and very dangerous power, who are, again, not gods, but they are still some of the most powerful beings in the universe, all of creation? Now, some do cave, and they choose to worship the Ori, although most of the Jaffa do stand resolute in their hard-won freedoms, and they fight, despite the odds being incredibly stacked against them, and them having absolutely no chance at all. But they would rather die free. Like, something that the Jaffa say all the time is, I die free. And if that's not a highlight of a really traumatized and scarred people, I mean, damn. So, yeah, I die free. That's... I think that phrase from the Jaffa has been uttered probably the most out of the series. So, while it might sound like religion is the main focal point of the show, it very much is not. It's just a very important tool that's used by some really talented directors and writers to highlight what it means to actually stand resolute in one's beliefs and to fight for them no matter the cost. And it's tropes like these that make religion in science fiction a foundation stone for modern sci-fi stories. I mean, it's right down there with clones, zombies, viruses of both the biological and technological natures, the singularity giving robots sentience, alien invasions, body snatching, or the Matrix. Religion in science fiction is almost always used to fantastic effect. I mean, I can't really think of a story that I've come across where it didn't play an important part of wherever one might find it. And its function was always one to keep tabs on, because it was sure to come into play in a major way. Well, that is all I have time for today, guys. Thank you so much for tuning in, and stick around for more Sci-Fi Unchained. But for now, live long and prosper, my friends. May the Force be with us all.